Do you know who was the first woman to make countless Hollywood directors, actors, and even politicians admit impossible to resist? Elizabeth Taylor, the woman with legendary violet eyes and a fiery heart. Not only a great star in her iconic role as Cleopatra, she was also a symbol of rebellion in her love life. The truth behind her 8 whirlwind marriages, her wild nights, and her passionate affair with Richard Burton left behind countless unanswered questions. Stay tuned until the end to discover what truly broke her in her final days. Elizabeth Taylor often appeared on the front pages of tabloids because of her scandalous love life. But few people know that behind the spotlight, she was a woman full of compassion, intelligence, and a deep sensitivity to the suffering of others. Born in 1932 inches Hampstead, England into an American family, Elizabeth moved with her parents to California in 1939 to escape the bombings of World War II. Her mother, Sarah Sauthorn, had once been a well-known Broadway actress. Rumors swirled that Sarah had a romantic relationship with MGM mogul Louis B. Mayer. Yet, while her mother could be soft and diplomatic, Elizabeth was the complete opposite. From a young age, she revealed a bold and outspoken personality, never hiding her contempt for Mayer, whom she saw as arrogant, authoritarian, and cruel. Taylor once quipped that he looked like a clumsy penguin who did nothing but crush those beneath him. Elizabeth Taylor's acting career began very early. At just 12 years old, she starred in National Velvet. It was on that set that an accident left her with both physical and emotional scars for life. King Charles, the horse usually so gentle with Taylor, suddenly threw her to the ground, causing a severe back injury. Yet Elizabeth held no resentment. She even asked to keep King Charles after filming ended, showing her capacity for forgiveness even when she was the one who suffered. Still, that injury cast a long shadow, forcing her to battle chronic pain for decades. Her teenage years were anything but calm. Once after Mayer insulted her mother, the young Elizabeth lifted her chin high and defiantly snapped that he and his entire studio could go to hell. The outburst forced her to issue an apology, but Elizabeth flatly refused. That boldness and fiery spirit made her grow up quickly, but also fueled shocking rumors. Some biographers have even claimed that Elizabeth had a brief relationship with Ronald Reagan, then a 6-year-old actor, when she was still far too young. Though the story remains unverified, it only adds another layer of drama to the already controversial life of the screen legend. In 1950, Taylor entered marriage for the first time with Conrad Hilton Jr., heir to the Hilton Hotel empire. Behind the lavish wedding that seemed like a fairy tale lay grim realities. Many historians believe MGM orchestrated the marriage to boost the young star's fame. They arranged everything: the extravagant wedding gown, the honeymoon nightgown, even a full-blown media campaign. But once the doors closed, it was a nightmare. Hilton was an alcoholic, a gambler, and even abusive toward Taylor. After just 3 short months, the marriage ended in misery, leaving her with deep emotional scars. Instead of sympathy, Elizabeth was forced by MGM to star in Love is Better Than Ever as a form of punishment for leaving her husband, and Hilton wasn't the only one who tried to treat her as a commodity. Howard Hughes, the eccentric director and wealthy inventor, once offered her parents a staggering sum of money simply to marry her. But Elizabeth was wise enough to refuse his proposal, refusing to let herself be traded like property and firmly asserting her own worth and independence. Her next husband was Michael Wilding, an English actor 20 years her senior. At first, the marriage gave Elizabeth a sense of peace. They had 2 sons together and seemed to be a happy family. But that peace soon shattered when Taylor discovered that Wilding frequently hosted decadent pool parties, inviting young women for entertainment. Once again, she was forced to face betrayal and the collapse of her marriage. Yet, that wasn't the only scandal surrounding their union. The sharp-tongued gossip columnist Hedda Hopper claimed that Wilding was hiding a secret from his new bride, that he was in fact attracted to men. Hopper insinuated that Wilding and his close friend Stewart had a relationship that went beyond friendship. Even so, Taylor and Wilding went through with their marriage. But that didn't stop Hopper from publishing numerous articles hinting that Wilding was always flirting elsewhere. James Dean, the young man who embodied Hollywood's spirit of rebellion, was taken far too soon, leaving fans heartbroken. But no one grieved more deeply than Elizabeth Taylor. When the car crash claimed Dean's life, Taylor was on set with him and Rock Hudson filming Giant. The devastating news silenced the entire crew. Yet, director George Stevens, cold and unyielding, forced Taylor, who was already drowning in grief, to immediately film a reaction scene meant for a sequence with Dean. She was devastated, enraged, and carried that resentment for the rest of her life, never forgiving Stevens for such cruelty. Not long after, another man closely tied to Taylor faced tragedy. Montgomery Clift, the sensitive leading man and one of her dearest friends, reluctantly attended a party at Taylor's home despite feeling unwell. On his way back, Clift fell asleep at the wheel and crashed into a tree. Horrified, Elizabeth rushed to the scene, cradling him in a life-or-death moment until the ambulance arrived. Clift survived, but his face was permanently disfigured. He spiraled into painkillers, erratic behavior, and eventual rejection by Hollywood. While others turned away, Taylor remained steadfast. She fiercely demanded studios cast Clift alongside her, even offering her own salary as a guarantee. But fate was merciless. Clift died at just 45 before his chance at a true comeback could ever arrive. The losses kept piling up. Yet Elizabeth continued searching for happiness. In 1957, after divorcing Michael Wilding, she entered her third marriage with producer Mike Todd. Unlike Clift's quiet romanticism, Todd was loud, extravagant, a true showman. For Elizabeth's birthday, he rented out Madison Square Garden, invited 18,000 guests, and even had it broadcast live on CBS. For Todd, love was incomplete without lavish gifts, diamonds, and golden strands of jewelry. The press was quick to brand Taylor a gold digger, but in reality, their relationship was far from easy. Once when Taylor, Todd, and Debbie Reynolds went out together, Reynolds was stunned to witness the couple in a heated argument. Stepping in to defend her friend, Reynolds was brushed aside when Taylor coolly remarked that, for her and Mike, such arguments weren't conflicts at all, but simply the prelude to passion. That same year, Taylor and Todd welcomed their daughter, Liza. Happiness seemed within reach. Elizabeth even triumphed over Marilyn Monroe to win the role of Maggie in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, a brilliant professional victory. But just as filming began, tragedy struck again. Mike Todd was killed in a plane crash on the very first day she stepped onto the set. The grief sent Taylor into a breakdown, even leaving her with a stammer. Fortunately, the southern drawl of her character helped her conceal it on screen. Todd's marriage to Taylor became the only one of her unions that didn't end in divorce. Elizabeth Taylor later said Mike Todd was one of the three great loves of her life, alongside Richard Burton and, of course, her dazzling collection of jewelry. Yet the scandals that swirled around her time with Todd were nothing compared to the media firestorm her next marriage unleashed. Just hours after Eddie Fisher, husband of America's sweetheart Debbie Reynolds, signed the divorce papers, Taylor walked him down the aisle. It was almost unbelievable. Elizabeth had just emerged from the devastation of losing Todd only to openly steal her best friend's husband. For Hollywood and all of America, this was a scandal beyond belief. Just before, Taylor and Debbie Reynolds had been inseparable, the closest of friends in the entertainment world. The story grew even more shocking when the press revealed a bitter twist. During the days when Fisher and Taylor were secretly entangled, Debbie called her friend. But the one who picked up wasn't Elizabeth. It was Eddie Fisher, the very husband betraying her. Calmly, almost cruelly, Debbie replied, "Darling, turn over so I can talk to Elizabeth." The line became legendary, laying bare the anguish of a woman who lost both her husband and her best friend in the same moment. Public outrage crashed down on Taylor without mercy. Branded a betrayer, she endured a tidal wave of criticism everywhere she went. After the roaring success of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, 1958, Taylor even considered retiring, stepping away from the spotlight, but MGM wouldn't allow it. In a bitter standoff, the studio forced her into Butterfield 8, a film where the lead role was that of a call girl opposite none other than Eddie Fisher himself. Elizabeth loathed the decision. Throughout filming, she barely spoke to the director, doing only what was required. And yet, fate played its cruel hand. The performance she despised earned Taylor her very first Academy Award for Best Actress. Critics raved, audiences marveled, But Taylor remained brutally honest. "I still think that film stinks." The next turning point in her life came with Cleopatra 1961. It was the most extravagant production in Hollywood history at the time, and Taylor became the first actress ever to earn a $1 million salary, a sum unheard of then. When asked about the record-breaking paycheck, she responded with a wry smile, "If someone is foolish enough to pay me $1 million to make a movie, I'm certainly not foolish enough to turn it down." For Elizabeth, it was both a personal triumph and a subtle act of revenge against those who had once dismissed her. But Cleopatra didn't just make Taylor wealthier, it thrust her into a whirlwind of love and politics. In 1959, after Mike Todd's death, Taylor converted to Judaism, taking the name Elisheba Rachel. While this was a matter of personal faith, it inadvertently dragged her into international controversy. The Egyptian government initially refused her entry because of her Jewish faith, nearly halting the production. Ultimately, the sheer scale of the film forced Cairo to relent, but the political stain only made Taylor an even bigger target for the press. And that was only the beginning. Cleopatra also ignited one of the most scandalous romances in Hollywood history, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Both were married at the time, but the magnetic pull between them during filming tore down every barrier. The press stalked their every move. Religious groups condemned them, yet Taylor and Burton made no effort to hide. They kissed on yachts, flaunted diamond rings in public, defying the world's outrage with reckless passion. In the midst of this media frenzy, Taylor once again stared death in the face. During filming, she contracted a severe case of pneumonia. By the time her assistant found her, her face had turned bluish-green, her breath nearly gone. Hollywood shook with reports that its queen had died on set. Doctors performed an emergency tracheotomy, and her condition was so dire that major news outlets prematurely announced her death. In the haze of illness, Taylor later recalled a haunting vision. She swore she saw her late husband, Mike Todd, who told her, "It's not your time yet, but when it is, I'll be waiting for you on the other side." Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Fisher officially divorced in 1964, closing the chapter on a scandal-ridden marriage. What surprised many was that after everything, Taylor eventually managed to reconcile with Debbie Reynolds, the very woman whose husband she had stolen. Though they were never as close as before, they maintained mutual respect. With Fisher, however, Taylor was resolute. After their split, the two never spoke again. 2 years later, Elizabeth reached a new milestone in her career when she starred alongside Richard Burton in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? 1966. The daring film explored mature themes, marital tensions, and biting language so intense that it forced the Motion Picture Association of America, MPAA, to overhaul its rating system, creating the 18 amperes category. This role not only cemented Taylor's artistic reputation, but also became a cornerstone in the turbulent love saga between her and Burton. The Taylor-Burton relationship became the ultimate symbol of love that was both passionate and destructive. They married, divorced, remarried, and finally ended things for good in 1976. During their fiery romance, Burton gifted Taylor a jaw-dropping 69-carat diamond. The gem, insured for $1 million, could only be worn by Taylor for 30 days each year. To many, it epitomized the extravagance and intensity of their love. But after their marriage ended, Taylor sold the diamond to fund the construction of a hospital in Botswana, a decision that shocked and impressed the public alike. Burton also left behind detailed diaries published after his death. In them, he recorded sharp critiques of colleagues, films he worked on, and plenty of cutting remarks about Elizabeth Taylor herself. He once wrote, "The worst things in my life have happened in Rome," referring to the chaos of the Cleopatra shoot. At times, he admitted Taylor was so drunk she could hardly read her lines. Yet beneath the harsh words remained a fierce love. Burton could never escape a love that was both his muse and his torment. After Burton, Elizabeth sought happiness again in her 7th marriage, this time to John Warner, an American politician. But life in Washington, D.C., with its strict rules and dull political soirees, was not for her. She grew increasingly lonely and turned to alcohol and prescription drugs to fill the emptiness. The marriage ended in 1982, leaving yet another emotional scar on her heart. Yet Taylor never gave up her yearning to love and be loved. In 1991, At nearly 60 years old, she shocked the world by marrying Larry Fortensky, a construction worker 20 years her junior. Their marriage lasted nearly 5 years and ended peacefully without scandal or bitterness, quite unlike the stormy unions that had defined her past. Final years. Beyond her love for men, Taylor was also famous for her deep affection for animals. She once quipped, "Some of my best male co-stars have been dogs and horses." She even wrote a children's book recounting her adventures with her four-legged companions. On one occasion, faced with the prospect of her beloved dogs being quarantined when she returned to England, Taylor paid for them to live aboard a yacht offshore rather than consign them to a kennel. The move was both controversial and quintessentially Taylor in its extravagance. Alongside her lavish lifestyle, it was Taylor's eyes that always captivated the public. With their seemingly violet hue, she appeared to possess one of the rarest eye colors in existence, supposedly only 1% of the population. In truth, her eyes were blue. Clever use of makeup and lighting tricks by her publicity team gave them that otherworldly purple sheen. Even if not truly violet, her gaze was powerful enough to become a cinematic legend. From a medical standpoint, her eyes were even more unusual. Taylor carried a FOXC2 genetic mutation that gave her an extra row of eyelashes. This double lash line added to her irresistible allure, though it also posed risks, as the excess lashes sometimes curved inward and scratched her cornea. Beyond her many marriages, Taylor also had fleeting romances with numerous famous figures. Among them were Hollywood and cultural icons such as Unsolved Mysteries host Robert Stack, witty actor Peter Ustinov, screen star Mickey Rooney, journalist Carl Bernstein, who helped expose the Watergate scandal, and glam rock legend David Bowie. But in 1985, an event changed Elizabeth forever. Her lifelong confidant, Rock Hudson, died of AIDS. The devastating news not only robbed her of a dear friend, but also propelled Taylor into a social fight few entertainers dared to confront at the time. She became a pioneering voice in raising awareness and funding for AIDS research. Along with her colleagues, Taylor co-founded the American Foundation for AIDS Research, AMFAR. In just over a decade, by 1997, AMFAR had raised more than $83 million, a staggering sum that proved both Taylor's influence and her determination. The image of a glamorous star, long associated with lights and luxury, was now intertwined with humanitarian activism, earning her a new kind of public admiration and respect. In her final years, Taylor faced a reality harsher than any script she had ever performed. Her once radiant body deteriorated under the weight of numerous illnesses, diabetes, skin cancer, heart failure, a brain tumor, not to mention the toll of addiction, and the aftermath of more than 40 major surgeries, including multiple hip replacements and a hysterectomy. She was hospitalized over 100 times. The glow of her screen stardom dimmed, not because she chose to step away, but because no studio would ensure a star with such a fragile medical history. In a tearful conversation with Barbara Walters, Elizabeth confessed, "I never wanted to stop making movies, but I had no choice." Though many men passed through her life, Elizabeth Taylor always maintained that Richard Burton was her one true final love. "Everyone after Richard was just for company," she once said. After Burton's death, Taylor attended his memorial and received one last letter he had written to her. The moment she saw his familiar handwriting, she completely broke down. She never revealed the letter in full, only disclosing a fragment, "Home is where Elizabeth is, and I want to come home." She kept that letter by her bedside until her final days, proof that their love, no matter how broken, no matter how turbulent, never truly died. On the 23rd of March 2011, Elizabeth Taylor took her last breath. As stated in her will, her casket arrived at the funeral 15 minutes late because she wanted to be fashionably late, even in death. The gesture left mourners grieving yet smiling, for it was quintessential Elizabeth, a star who would never fade quietly. After her passing, many wondered if Taylor would be buried beside Richard Burton, but that wish was never fulfilled. Burton's last wife, Sally Hay, purchased the surrounding plots and erected a large headstone that covered both adjacent spaces, a final claim of ownership. Elizabeth Taylor was not laid to rest beside Richard Burton, but she did achieve her ultimate wish, to be buried with his last love letter. Inside her ornate casket lay not the 69-carat diamond, not a castle, not the glory of Hollywood, but a few handwritten lines from the man who had made her live, love, and suffer to the deepest extremes. And it was this more than anything else that made Elizabeth Taylor not just a legend of the silver screen, but a legend of love itself.